Your players try to take a long rest after every fight, maybe in the middle of a dungeon. You want some downtime for them to create bastions or strongholds, or the wizard wants to make their magnum opus of a magic ring that's going to allow them to bend all life to their will. Maybe you want travel to matter, or you need to set aside some time so that you can do one-on-one adventures because some players are not going to be available for a while and you want them to all reconvene and match up. Then you need to control and manage the flow of time. I'm James. I've been a Dungeon Master for over 25 years. On this channel, I talk about the things that I think about, plan, and plot for my tabletop role-playing games. If you like that kind of content, then there's buttons down there for like and subscribe. Let's talk about the things that you might get out of managing time, whether you should bother to do it at all, and a tool that I use that's free to manage the time and events in my world. You don't have to care about your calendar. I didn't for years. I played very beer and pretzels Monster of the Week style of games where they killed monsters, got loot and experience, they leveled up, and they did it all over again next week. Nobody really noticed that they started off at level 1 and then 7 days later they were level 20. Didn't bother them. Nobody cared, including me. It was still a lot of fun, still valid Dungeons and Dragons. It is a different way to play where you care about the verisimilitude of your world, that this is a real place and that time is passing for these characters. It does take more effort to set up a calendar. I'd like to argue that it's absolutely going to pay off for you, but the truth is it might not. You might not get to use it for your players. This might just be something that you do for you as a dungeon master because you're not going to get to play Dungeons and Dragons this week and you need to scratch that itch and go do something with your world. This may just be for you. There may not be a payoff, but sometimes it does pay off. And it's really cool when it does. For example, you're sitting at a table and you threw out a bunch of plot lines and your players didn't pick up any of them. So you invented on the spot an ancient lich that was going to do something somewhere and the players attached to that. And now you're struggling to come up with what this lich is trying to do where. And you look down at your calendar and you notice there's going to be an eclipse on the summer solstice. That sounds like a proper magical time for things to happen, for an ancient lich to care about. What could I do with a solstice? Kind of puts me in the mind of like Stonehenge. Maybe this lich could go to Stonehenge and he kills all the druids that are gathering there and he uses that corruption to empower his crown of domination. With the blood of these druids drenching the crown, he can take control of all the treants and the fey animals that are in the forest around this henge, and he can command them so that he can use them to dominate the entire kingdom. Ha 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 ha. Because you've locked this event to your calendar, your players can't take as much time as they want. They can't waste 4 days in town for the blacksmith to finish that magic sword that they asked for. They can't take a long rest after fighting the Remoraz to be prepared to go Nova to fight the storm giants to take a long rest again, because that's going to burn some of their time. They need to manage their resources and ration them because you've given them an opponent, time. Once you start keeping track of time, using it as a plot device, the players will start caring about things that they didn't before. Travel is the most obvious example. Time and space are intimately connected. Take Stonehenge and the Lich from before. We didn't say where Stonehenge was. We can move it wherever we need it to be. We put it someplace inconvenient to the players. It's no longer enough to just be around and be there when this thing comes around. They now have to get there. Travel matters. The shortest route would be to go by sea. No way, that'll take too much time. Maybe we try going over the Jornsgard mountain instead. Those mountains are filled with storm giants and they are not friendly. One fight goes bad and we have to take a long rest. We are not going to make it in time. Guys, my notes say that the dwarves made a tunnel through the Jornsgard mountain. We could try going through there. The dwarves abandoned those tunnels like 200 years ago. There's definitely something dangerous living in there now. Yeah, but it can't be any worse than storm giants, right? I've used variations on this in my campaign to great effect. Rather than tying a villain's actions to a specific clock, I've also tied the availability of a location, a dungeon, to the clock. If you want to get into the Temple of Trajan Yamashiro in the Swamp of Sadawa, you have to be there when both moons are full. The players knew where the swamp was, but they didn't know where the temple was, and they ended up having about 30 days to explore the swamp. They found a bunch of lizard folk, tribes of ghouls, an ancient black dragon, and Mana ended up dying in one of the dungeons until they finally arrived at this temple and they were able to enter into it and eventually stop the flood of demons out into their world. I've also used it to tie specific beliefs of the people to a specific calendar date. We do that here in the real world with holidays and religious festivals, so it makes sense that a world with magic would also tie those things to specific days. The people of Uldia have a prophecy that says that as long as the blood of Trajan Yamashiro sits on the cherry throne on the winter solstice, the country will prosper. Unfortunately, the demoness Minatra, Seer Naya, and the red dragonesh Carligan have kidnapped Empress Constantina Yamashiro, and they intend to sacrifice her on the winter solstice to use her divine blood to empower a gate to allow their master, Gross, to enter into the world. Good luck, players. Prophecies are great for fantasy RPGs. They're a proper fantasy trope, and while they have some specific events that they call out, they're usually not specific on the exact date and details in general.
Look to my coming, at first light on the 5th day. At dawn, look to the east.
As long as there is night and day, no. But 3 days hence, in Aquila, there will be a day without a night, and a night without a day.
Listen! That guy beneath Central, the one that they call their father, he's gonna open the portal on the day of reckoning.
For neither can live while the other survives.
They didn't say what would happen when Gandalf arrived on the 5th day. They didn't say what would happen when there was a day without a night and a night without a day. They didn't say who was going to be born to this thing to ultimately fight the Dark Lord. I didn't say which solstice. I didn't say which person. I just said bloodline on Trajan Yamashiro. That could have been anybody. Players decided to go rescue the young empress. What would have happened if they didn't? I don't know. We'll never know. That's kind of the magic of role-playing games. I'm just moving things around on the back end. But that moving things around can also make it feel like players that there is Deus Ex Machina. The Dungeon Master can just move whatever they want at any convenient time, which is true. But adding that veneer of the calendar, even though I actually made that up too, being able to present it in paper and say, this is truth. You cannot negotiate with it, is the same reason that some Dungeon Masters roll the dice out in the open. You can't argue with that. That is true. That is what happened. And the players arriving in time to do something and seeing on the calendar that that was when the solstice was going to happen, an eclipse happened on this day, adds weight to it. It makes it feel like this was a real event. We were here in time for it. This could not have happened any other way. And that's also part of the magic of role-playing games. You've run into a situation where some players are available for certain days and other players are available for different days. They still want to all be an adventuring group, but for 3 months, they're not going to play together. But they do want to play Dungeons and Dragons still. So this is your opportunity to split the party. You'll be able to manage it fine. People have done it before and it's ended up fine. You're going to run this as 2 separate adventuring groups that all have to meet up on a specific day on the in-game calendar. Say the autumnal equinox at the end of the last home. One group is going to go off with Raceland and help him go become an archmage, while the rest are going to go explore what happened with the gods and why they've disappeared and stopped answering everybody. Everybody's ultimately going to meet up together, and then they will be able to compare notes and tell the Dungeon Master what grand adventure they'd all like to go off with together. You're using the calendar as a tool by which to manage these 2 different groups, so that even though they're off on 2 separate adventures, you have the verisimilitude of the world to say, you have to be back here by the end date. This is your deadline. A while back, I did a video on enchanting items and the rules that I use, where you gather items and then you use them to craft a magic item. And I specifically didn't put in rules for time because some campaigns use time and some campaigns don't. And I wanted it to be useful to both. Obviously, I care about time, so I did have rules for those. So I've updated the document and put it in as a new optional module on there. If you've already gotten that from the DM's Guild, then it's just an update. You can go grab it. If you haven't grabbed it before, it's pay what you want on the DM's Guild. In there, I talk about some options that you might use to flavor your world for different events mattering to the time that you use to create a magic item. Obviously, the amount of time should matter. It takes this long to make a thing. But when you make it, what astrological events, that's a classic thing to matter. People throughout time have thought that the position of the stars, the moons, different planets mattered to our fates and they had some sway over our lives. What would that do in a world with magic? In our world, the moon controls the tides. What does that do in a world with ley lines of fire, water, earth, and air? Do the moons control those, or do the stars? What about abjuration magic, evocation magic, the 8 magical schools? Are those controlled by the moons? Maybe those are controlled by planets, and as different planets come into ascendance, those magical energies are ascendant, and it's better to create a magic item if Mars is ascendant than, say, Mercury or something. Think about places of power. We've got places in the actual world that were built because people were trying to honor specific seasons. Stonehenge is probably the quintessential example. One of the popular theories is that it was built as a sort of calendar, and that people from all over ancient England went and gathered during the summer solstice. You could use that if you want. What if every druid has to gather at this specific location, a Stonehenge in your world, to reaffirm their oaths to the spirits of nature, nature itself, whatever it is that's giving them power? If they don't, then not a druid anymore. That might really suck for the druid player. I'm not sure that I want to do that. Okay, you can throw it out. Maybe that during the evening of the summer solstice, the shortest night of the year, that is when the portal to the realm of fairy opens, and mortals are allowed to go through and request an audience with Queen Titania, Lord Oberon, Queen Mab, the lords and ladies of fairies. Those people are ancient immortal beings that have been there since the beginning of time. They're primordial spirits of nature. They probably know some useful things, but they're going to want something in return. It is a classic fairy story for them to say, you must return in a year and a day, or do this within a year and a day, so that the players are once again on the clock. Okay, so I maybe convinced you that you may want to try to do this time. Where do you go get a calendar? The easiest way is to just go get an Earth calendar, the Gregorian calendar, and just use that. It's what Tolkien did. The Hobbits don't have April, May, June. They have Hobbit months, whatever those are. And he is translating them into our languages so that when we are reading The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, we can keep track of time. That would certainly make it easier on our players. They don't have to deal with our nonsense and translate that into what it is. They understand that when it is December and they are in the Northern Hemisphere, it is going to be cold outside. If they're in the Southern Hemisphere, it's going to be summer, it's going to be warm outside. They get it. It's really easy. But then you do have to deal with some of the idiosyncrasies of the Earth calendar. It doesn't always line up perfectly. There are 365 days and change, so you're going to need a leap year. And all the months have the same number of days in them, and they don't line up perfectly with the cycles of our moons. So you may want to make your own. There's lots of solutions for that. You can make something with Excel that's easily accessible. There's lots of different tools online, some of which are free. This is my favorite one. This is the calendar for my fantasy world and Salem that I play in and DM in. This is on app-fantasy-calendar.com. I'll put a link down the doobly-doo so that you can reference it. They are not sponsoring this video. They don't know that I'm doing this. This is just a tool that I legitimately use during my prep and during my game sessions for different reasons. This is all the free stuff. There's a paid option to be able to embed into like a Discord server or a website. I don't need that. Just need a tool that I can come in here, make things happen programmatically at different times on a cycle, add to the notes, and then I need to be able to print it out for note taking in the game session. I print out a full copy with everything in it for myself. As a dungeon master, I need to know all those things in the moment. For my players, I restrict some information. It makes perfect sense to me that a character, therefore a player, would know when the winter solstice, the spring equinox, those kind of things happen. They would know when the phases of the moon are. They can just look up there and see them. But they wouldn't automatically know that a solar eclipse is going to happen. So those kind of things get moved away. The players don't see them. I do sometimes collect their calendar, and then I take my calendar and then I add all the notes of what the adventuring group has done to the calendar. Sometimes it's because I have to replace a map. Sometimes it's because the year has advanced. Sometimes it's because I filled the map with so much chicken scratch, we need a new copy. In that case, they get one that has what their players has done. That's what all these green notes are on here. There's a lot of functions on this calendar, and it'd be like a 45, 50-minute video if I did them all. So I want to cover a few things really quickly that I find really useful in this tool specifically. The weather. I do care about weather in my game because travel matters. If it is heavily raining, the roads are going to be muddy and it's going to slow down your travel. Also, if it's heavily raining or heavily snowing, there's obscurement. A random encounter with a wyvern is going to be very different. During clear skies, you'd see it coming way off over there. There's probably no surprise there. But if it is heavily snowing and you don't see them, the wyvern might be flying off with your cleric by the time you notice that anything was wrong. Sometimes a player asks offhandedly, what's the weather like? And being able to say, it's about 28 degrees Fahrenheit, there's a light wind, and it's perfectly clear skies, there's no rain or snow. And be able to point to that on a calendar and say, this is what it is, makes it feel like that is truth. That is what it is. even though that's something that I as a dungeon master made up through the program, it's different than rolling dice. If I roll dice for the snow during a wyvern attack, it kind of feels to the players as if I am forcing them into a situation where they are inconvenienced, where it is the odds are stacked against them. If the calendar says it, even though again I made that up, then oh, well, there's nothing we can do about that. The calendar says that. A piece of paper has authority to people. It's just the way it works. It helps out a lot. Other things that I use. Obviously, as a calendar, you control things like the weekdays, the months, leap years, eras. I like to use the moons, coming in here and setting when the moons cycle and when their phases are. I use that to make a lot of events happen during full moons. Things are more impactful when there's a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse. Locations, you can control when things happen during certain locations. Like if I push northern Odea, the aurora is visible. Not in southern Odea, too far south, can't see the northern lights. Then we get to events. That is the big category that has all of the power. An event can be something that you just pop in here like this, and it has a specific day and time. It is one-time event, like the actions of my current adventuring group. They call themselves innocent bystanders. That's when that happened, when they invaded the Bednik camp. Then there are other things that you make happen programmatically. For example, I have a planet, Siddeus, that orbits every 8 months. It's in alignment with the fantasy world in Salem. Then there is a season of glory that happens if Siddeus is in alignment within Salem, and it is the season of spring. The people in my world believe that is a glory star, a season of glory, and that Zurich will bless their armies if they go to war. When you start adding these kind of programmatic events, sometimes they line up in really special ways. Like in the year 939, there's a season of glory with a solar eclipse. In a fantasy world of gods and magics and armies clashing, soothsayers and divination, when there is a season of war and the sun is blacked out, they would definitely think that that portends something. I don't know what that is yet, but one day my players will ask when something happened or when something will happen. And I will remember that there is a day like this and come back and say, this is when that happens. And just like with the weather, that makes it feel like that is what happened in the world. This is a more real place. Every time you can add to that verisimilitude of your world, your players start to take it more seriously. That means they take their actions, their choices, and the consequences of their actions more seriously. I did not start out with a full calendar with all these events and sit down here for like 5 hours and fill it out. I came in and the first thing I did was set up my months and my days. And I played with that for a couple years. And then I came in one day and I pushed the magic button that added the solstice events and the equinoxes. Then I came in one day and said, what if I add the moons? I need to know when they are, and I put them in here. And then one day I needed to know when the planets were going to be around. So I came in here and I put those in as well. Once I put the planets in, I was like, well, I might as well do a morning star and an evening star like Venus. Let's put those in. Your players are on a break. It's spring break, somebody's sick, you didn't get to play this week, that sucks. Come in here and tinker with your world again. You are creating an engine by which you can brainstorm events in the moment so that when you are sitting down at the table and the players spitball something and you go, that sounds cool, we should do that. Something about this thing that's going on in the game world, I think time should matter. When should that thing happen? And you flip through your notes and go, ooh, solar eclipse in a season of glory, or the summer solstice, or there's going to be both moons are empty. We're going to go into the Feywild during that because that's when it's easier to go in the Feywild, and boom, that's when it happens. Time is just one tool in your Dungeon Master toolbox. May not always be the right thing for the job. Whatever's going to make the game more engaging for your players, do that. That's the right thing to do. Goes for any Dungeon Master advice, by the way. This is just one thing that I use in my games, and my players seem to enjoy it. Creates an engine by which we can create stories that seem like they happen in a real place. And it's useful for them to take notes. These are their notes from my game. It's not the right tool for your players. That's cool. Doesn't make your game any better, any worse. Just makes it a different game. As long as they're having fun, they're engaged in the game, then you're doing a good job. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, remember you're a player too. Try to have some fun.